So yeah, maybe let's get this started so we don't waste our precious minutes. So hello everyone, welcome to the panel XR Distribution Taking the Extra Step. My name is Susana Grilo. I'm an independent creator and producer, and I will be moderating this conversation. First, I want to thank our four speakers for joining me. We all come from the XR Entertainment Advisory Group at the Academy of International Extended Reality, but there is a lot more to each one of us than this. So let's get to know our panelists. Michaela, can we start with you?
Well, my name is Michaela. So excited to be here today. I identify as a creative strategist and a consultant. My work with virtual reality began as a 360 filmmaker. I did a lot of the work with Time Magazine, a lot of work with Sports Illustrated, a lot of work with Sunset Magazine, so very much in the media world and the journalism world. While I was working with Time, we also started to create volumetric room scale experiences as well as augmented reality experiences that launched off the cover of the different magazines. And since then, I've been an independent creative strategist and consultant for other entities. My main focus is in journalism, nonfiction storytelling, and social impact. I also dabble with storytelling techniques that utilize AI, utilize volumetric capture, that utilize interactivity, both within XR and beyond XR. So I like to think of myself as technology agnostic.
Okay. Bobby, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you. My name is Bobby Thandi. I'm the founder and CEO of XR Games, focusing on VR and AR development. Our studio is based here in Leeds, England, and we're about 35 staff now. Our most recent project launched on the 25th of March, a project called Zombieland VR, working with our longtime partners, Sony Pictures. This game's got about 270 ratings in the Oculus Store, averaging about 4.4 out of 5, which we're very proud of. And it's now going multi-platform. I'm very excited for that to happen in the coming weeks. And prior to Zombieland, we'd launched Angry Birds Under Pressure, which was delivered on time, on budget, and to critical acclaim in August 2019. And we're working on a number of other exciting projects at the moment as well. Thank you.
Jasmine, don't you go ahead?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jasmine. I'm head of studio and design at Evernever Games. My career has actually been in games and interactive media, and my first foray into VR was what feels like many years ago, doing enterprise training VR experiences. And in the past few years, I've been working on games as social experiences at Evernever. And we have a game coming out very soon that is board games in VR. And it'll be on the Oculus Quest, and that's very exciting. So.
And last but not least, Lesley.
Thanks, Susana. My name is Lesley Klassen. I'm the CEO of Flipside XR. We make an app called Flipside Studio, and it's a virtual production app for creating animated content. So multiplayer people get together in a virtual space and they create animated content. We've worked with Bento Box. They're the makers of Bob's Burgers. Super RTL is a broadcaster out of Germany that we've worked to launch a kids program with. We work with a number of other partners. We're bringing our product to the Quest this year, and a number of other projects that are exciting and we can't talk about yet. But of course, like everyone who's working in this industry, we're always trying to figure out the next thing. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
No. Well, thank you, Lesley. So this is going to be an open conversation. You in the audience, feel free to add any questions to the Q&A box, and we'll try to get as many of them as we can at the end of the session. And meanwhile, I would love to get the perspective of each of you on a few topics. For example, your content has a whole life cycle with different phases. Do you think that creators are still unaware or somehow downplaying some of these steps, and that ends up hindering the whole distribution process?
Yeah, I'll take that one to start. I mean, yes, in the in the folks that the creators that I'm talking to, I see that there is some downplaying, and in my opinion, part of that is because as a creator, there are so many moving parts in XR, and it's such like a big umbrella of things that you have to cover, and you may be coming into the XR space being an expert in like one part of the life cycle, and so your ability to understand all of the pieces is not necessarily there, and no one necessarily expects that you could. But that's what I'm seeing from creators who are coming from, who've never done VR before, or AR or XR, or folks that are coming in from very specific parts of the cycle and trying to tackle the entire cycle as a creator.
Can I add 2 cents to something to that?
Sure.
Is one of the things when I first started, creating content for XR, and our team did, we started off going, and this was many years ago. We started off going, well, if you build it, they will come. That idea of like, I got a cool product or a cool game, people are going to find you. And then it became for us not just, if you build it, they will come. Then it became, if you build it and put it on the Oculus store, they'll come. And it's like, that's another little bit of a fallacy too. And then what I've realized now as we've created content is you need to know your audience, you need to know where you're distributing it, but you need to spend all the time, 6 to 9 months prior to that, building that narrative that drives people to actually get your content. So distribution's a bigger picture, not just like, oh, I found my platform. And so sometimes that's the shift that'll happen, is when you start bringing things to market, it's a longer life cycle to that whole process.
That's a common attitude in games as well, not outside of, because I'm very familiar with the game space. Even outside of XR, a lot of game makers will be like, well, if I build something really great, the audience will come and I don't have to think about the distribution. Whereas when we think about everything, when you decide what you're going to build and how you're going to build it and what you're going to build it for, you need to be thinking about what distribution is going to happen. And it may not just be one place. And that has to be like part of your entire story. To Leslie's point, is at the beginning thinking about like what your business model is and how you're going to distribute and who you're distributing to. It would be great if you could just build something great and the audience will come, but that isn't actually how it works.
And I think that's also when you need to start thinking about strategic partnerships, right? So you don't have to do it all. It was interesting because my look at the back end of being a part of a media company was everyone saw us as their distribution pipeline. And I wasn't worried about distribution, about the pieces, because I knew that with Time Magazine or Sports Illustrated, you had a built-in audience. But a lot of independent creators would reach out to Time Magazine or Sports Illustrated with 360 VR films or with potential working XR experiences and see if there would be a way that they could partner with us as their distribution partner, so that strategically they knew, I can make this really amazing thing. It aligns perfectly with Time Magazine's brand. If I know Time Magazine will distribute it, that'll get us the eyes we need. That'll get us the big logo we need. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that you'll monetize the content, right? Like, I think there's 2 different conversations here. Like, are your KPIs actually being able to monetize the content and saying, like, we're building a game, which is super viable, so we can get income back in our door? Or are you sort of in the realm of independent filmmaker where you're like, I'm putting out this content, and if I can get big eyes, big laurels, big names on top of the content, that's success enough for me? And then for me, my next focus with the work I do is like the impact it's making on people, because I'm involved with social impact making. So it's even less about how many eyes and the monetization as much as it is about, are we making an impact for every single person we're reaching out to? And even that is a specialized distribution strategy. So I love this conversation. There's just so many different routes. And I guess the biggest thing I'd want to say to anyone watching is that there's no single answer. And it's really about being strategic with partnerships and being strategic about your goals, as my other panelists have said very beautifully.
And just to throw in my 2 cents, absolutely agree with that. And when we were thinking about which platform Zombieland's going to come out on first, we're an indie studio. It'd be great if we had the number of developers to launch simultaneously on all the platforms out there, but we're not that big, so we have to make a strategic decision as to where we aim for, which platform we aim for first. And the calculation and the analysis we did was that the Quest, the Oculus platform, specifically because of the Quest 1 and the Quest 2, would be the best platform to launch on initially because of the volume of headsets being sold, the kind of dedication and commitment from Facebook. As we've seen reported, Mark Zuckerberg's got a fifth of his employees, 10,000 staff working on AR, VR. You know, they're going all in here. And to find an ROI, get a return on investment of the money you've put into it, we found that the Oculus Store was great due to the number of people buying the headset, using the headset, in comparison to, for example, PSVR 1. It's been out a number of years. Not as many people, it felt, were using it as they use Oculus Quest. Obviously, when PSVR 2 comes out, it's a different story. And now, as we think about which other platforms we're going to go to, Steam VR is obviously high in the list to get to Valve Index owners, to HP Reverb 2 owners, HTC, Windows Mixed Reality, and so on. And then obviously you also want to go international. So to reach the Chinese market, I highly recommend having conversations with iQIYI. If you don't know who they are, they're like the Netflix in China with like 500 million, 500 million people who consume their content. So they're very well known in China for great content, and they're launching, their VR headset, their VR platform, as well as Pico, P-I-C-O, and Hawaii. So, there's lots of great partners, and it's, as Michaela said, it's about developing your strategic partnerships. And the reason you want to develop your strategic partnerships is that when you incur issues and hurdles, whether it's the SDK, whether it's other bugs you've come across, you want help from the platform owner. But in addition to help in getting your content on their platform, you also are seeking prominent feature placement in their store, because that is, for a content creator, the holy grail. You need, obviously, build up your community, you need to do the marketing, and that's a whole separate conversation, but you also need to try and seek prominent feature placement, because that's, gold dust, and the stuff that we're seeking. And to get that, obviously you need to make great content. So, great content always comes first, creating the best experience possible for your audience, understanding what they may enjoy playing, and then working with your strategic partnerships across an array of different platforms to get your content out to as many people as possible, because then you have an opportunity, fingers crossed, to make your money back and make profits as well. And that is unfortunately needed to enable you to go again and do more projects and more projects, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Bobby, to, also to Michaela's point about knowing what your KPIs are, like what your ultimate goal is with the experience. So if you're trying to make money, looking at, where your audience is, and if that's the Oculus Quest, then that's what makes sense for your experience. But if you're trying to do an impact experience, is the Quest the right headset and distribution channel for you? Or is Pico, if you're trying to reach a more international audience? Or if you're trying to do something in the education space or the medical space, what are the best distribution channels for you? All of that is really important to think about in the beginning and know what your goals are.
Mm-hmm. And a little bit on this, that there's kind of a dichotomy regarding what's happening to the market right now. On one side, you have the lack of standardization in terms of hardware and software as an added obstacle. But on the other hand, you also see this debate around a rising monopoly of output platforms. Do you think that they are actually happening simultaneously, and is one of them more harmful for the creators? For example, we were talking about having your content ready for Pico or for Oculus. Does the software, what you have to create has to to change in order to enter
Yeah.
those platforms, right? So is that really hard for a creator, or it ends up being a bonus thing that you do?
I can jump in on this one. Like, I'm in it right now. So I have an experience that we're premiering at Tribeca Festival next week. And it's been just this not hectic, but it's just been this moment of leading up to it where it's originally a 360 film. So, okay, we can sideload Oculus Go headsets and showcase that at universities. But now not all the universities wants VR headsets. Okay, so then how are we going to redistribute this 360 film? Oh, let's embed it into a Typeform experience and make it more interactive, because you can embed a YouTube link into an interactive sort of Typeform like quiz, and we can build data from that. Okay, now the 360 video is embedded in a Typeform. Oh, now Mozilla Festival is really interested in the 360 film, but they want us to build the 360 film inside of a Mozilla Hubs platform, which is like a volumetric space, right? So then we hire a 3D environmental designer, and we say, okay, we've got a 360 film, but we're going to build a 3D environment for Mozilla Hubs. Tribeca sees it. Oh my gosh, we love that, but we're not going to be distributing on Mozilla Hubs. We're going to be distributing on the More. So we're going to need you to re-output your packages, but do it completely like how you did it for Hubs. Okay, Tribeca, building you something for the More. Well, not all the press has tethered headsets to watch the experience in the More. Is there a way you can do something else for us? Okay, we'll revamp our Typeform experience and use the Verse platform. Oh, but Oculus is suddenly really interested in this. Do you think you could rebuild the whole virtual environment for Oculus Quest as well? Sure, it has been nonstop. Like, how many iterations of this experience can we have? Which I love. Like, I really enjoy the fact that we can showcase this one piece of content on so many different platforms and build so many ecosystems around it. But that's the reality of what I'm currently facing in this day-to-day world of, like, everyone loves it, but they want it on their platform. Everyone loves it, but they want it in their, like, in the way they want it showcased. And it's fun because it means that there isn't that monopoly. Like, I haven't been just beholden to being on the Quest headset, which is kind of a relief in certain ways in the world of monopolizing. But on the other hand, I'm actually really relieved we're going to be on the Quest headset, because that just makes my life so much easier, because now I can take the Quest headset to all of our like VIP activations, all of our press activations, all of our event community activations, and it's easy to set up and it's easy to get going, versus asking someone to be like, okay, here's an Oculus Go headset, and then I need you to get out of the Oculus Go headset and do this interactive point, and then go over there and put the Oculus Go headset back on your face. Like, you can do it all in the Quest build. So I know that was a long-winded way of saying both are happening, both have positives, and both have downfalls. And as a creator, it is a lot to juggle. Especially if you're really trying to give each person the experience that they need, because it can be packaged in so many ways: desktop, mobile, headset, etc.
Just to talk about a bit of a different perspective, like, I totally understand that challenge. And one of the things that we've done as a company is we've started to really spend time at the developer level trying to abstract as much understanding of these variety of platforms in a way that it doesn't become a development nightmare every time a new platform comes up. So one of the areas that we've spent time is kind of creating our own VRXR framework, which is internal to our company, that, for example, one of the other things that happens is, there's a new controller that comes out and it has different finger tracking than the other finger tracking, or the button mapping is different, or they haven't standardized controllers in the industry, or our art assets aren't optimized for the high-end resolutions on the new headsets versus, some of the other ones. Or if you're doing something for Quest, it needs to be built in an Android package. If you're doing something for desktop, it has to be built as the window package. So these are all challenges, just to add to that. But there are ways of creating abstractions or using tools. Like, we use Unity. Unity has a lot of solves these problems for us in many ways. And so that's one of the things that we've been doing. We've been really looking at, we've really been getting our dev team to step back and go, okay, let's not necessarily install every single SDK, but let's look at what are the commonalities of these SDKs, what can we abstract, and what are the special cases that we have to handle on our own. It's a little nerdy and geeky, but that's one solution that we've thought through.
Yeah, we do something very similar. We have a platform, but that we've built on top of Unreal that allows us to have a lot of like common things that we can use across different platforms, different experiences. But like even still, to what you were pointing out, Lesley, like interaction is key, and like that really good experience for the end user. And so as soon as you move to a new platform, a new distribution platform, if we're talking specifically about hardware, the interaction paradigm might change. And sometimes doing a one size fits all ends up reducing how good the experience is and what you've created. And so you have, like, there is a great expense potentially to going to multiple platforms, multiple distribution channels, because there isn't some consistency that with other more mature technology, that even if you go from one tool to the next, you may see more consistency. I mean, there's always going to be some level of there's a difference here versus a difference here, because that's just how markets work. But it is expensive in software when you have to redesign or redevelop parts of it. For example, we're already in talks about distributing the game that we're working on to a different headset. The different headset is not full VR, it's glasses with a different controller. And so it means redesigning pieces of the experience in order to work. It's not just technically making it work on that. It's literally redesigning parts of how you interact with the experience and how the art works, how the art looks, in order to get it to another platform.
And just to add to all those very insightful thoughts is just a special shout out to OpenXR, whose work is beginning to help solve the fragmentation issue facing all XR creators. And although we launched with Quest as our primary device in the first instance and used Oculus's native SDK, we've now shifted to OpenXR to resolve the issue of having to go multi-platform, and that does take away some of the pain points that have been mentioned here too.
Mm-hmm. And so you all work in different points of the XR sphere. We have Michaela in the independent creators side, then Bobby working with well-established IPs. If we focus a little bit on your personal experiences, for example, you kind of already touched a little bit on the idea of choosing the right platform. And Jasmine, for example, what were the biggest challenges you faced when trying to find the right platform for your audience?
Certainly it was market share, because for us, some of the goals around is making it a sustainable business when it comes to that specific game. And so making that game, find product market fit, we had to look at where the audience was. And for us, for one specific title, Neverboard, we were looking at the Oculus ecosystem as the place that made most sense for us. And of course, at the time that we started development, the Go was still in distribution. There were more PC headsets, and we were having to figure out, the Quest was just coming out. We had gotten to experiment with it because we were working on enterprise VR, but it wasn't yet a consumer headset at the time that we were playing with it. And we were having to decide, like, how are we going to do this? What platform are we going to or what headset are we going to decide to focus on? Because they have different interaction paradigms. There's a different number of audience. We don't know what the audience for the Quest is yet. And we made the decision to go for the Quest because we believed that that's where the audience would be. And that was a good guess, but it was still a guess because the marketplace is still early, even though we are starting to see that inflection point where you really can make a business out of an experience and like truly make it something that can be profitable and that you can sustain a team on.
My one-liner to add to that is something to think about when you're creating your experiences if you can add a virtual camera that helps you stream the experiences out to OTT platforms like YouTube or Facebook Live, you can also bring a whole auxiliary audience to your project. That creates fear of missing out, that creates demand, that drives things as well. So think about that non-VR audience as well while you're developing.
Yeah, and XR, you know, the XR community is beyond just Oculus Quest headsets and Sony PS4. I mean, we're talking about AR glasses, and we're talking about the AR that you can do on your phone. Like, it's more than just VR. It doesn't have to just be VR, and there can be other experiences that touch these immersive technologies and aren't limited to the audience that are on those very specific VR headsets.
And Bobby, for example, you also talked about even with your latest game that it was kind of a whole process of choosing the platform and getting it right. And what helped you most on that? Was it more of an educated guess? Is there anything that you might suggest that can help with making that decision?
For sure, it is a guess, because you're trying to make a decision regarding your game when it comes out, whether it's 12 months, 18 months later. So it was kind of based on all the information we had before us. It was the best educated guess we could make, and the seeing the Quest 2 selling so well, is great validation of us going what we felt was the right choice. And it's kind of also worth taking into account kind of the VRC process, virtual reality check process. So for example, Oculus and PlayStation have a very, very thorough VRC process, and they will help identify issues with your game and bugs in your game. And these can all be ironed out prior to launch, because of course these platform owners want the best experience possible for their players. And that's fantastic to get to work with PlayStation or Oculus on the VRC process, because when you launch on Steam VR, there is no VRC process, and your game will just go live straight away. And if you went live straight away and went Steam VR first, you are gonna your users, your players are going to encounter some bugs, because it's it's now impossible for you to catch every single one. And that's why we will not only, and if that is the case, and for whatever reason you are going Steam VR first, I'd highly kind of recommend reaching out to companies such as Keywords or Universally Speaking, who can provide, a large number of QA testers and highlight, critical bugs, minor bugs, etc. with your game, because you just, as much as you try, you're not going to catch them all. But it's definitely worth taking that into account as well when thinking about which is the best platform for my game. And the goal has always been to be on as many platforms as possible. But unless you're a very large studio, it's very difficult to sim ship. So you have to make an educated guess.
And Michaela, you were talking just about your latest experience, which has been bumpy in terms of outputting of this, taking a decision of where it's going to get out to the audience. As an independent creator, and here I'm pulling towards that. Where did the most help come from? Are you getting government support, private funds, grants? Just an idea of how people can actually, muddle through all that difficult task that is to deliver the product to all the platforms you can.
Great question. So a lot of them have been supporting us to export to their platform or to rebuild to their platform. We've also working alongside of grants, which can be very difficult because that means you have to report everything. And the way that we are reporting to ask more money from grants or to continue to get these grants is by measuring our impact. So the experience is about educating people around surveillance technology and just sort of the rise of what could happen if we make drones sort of police officers in the world. So it's very different from it's still a little different from this idea of I created this piece of content and I'm putting it out into the world and everyone and anyone should go and enjoy it. It's really about how are the people engaging with the content even after they watch the content. So being able to ask for extra funds to be able to say, hey, Tribeca Festival is in Manhattan, but our goal is to actually get people in Brooklyn to see this piece, and people in Bronx to see this piece, and people in Queens to see this piece. So reaching out to previous funders to say, we finished the piece, but you funded a piece that was about social impact and making an impact and changing people's behaviors. So now, you know, we need a social impact strategy budget too on top of that. So while you funded the creation of the piece is only going to go as far as how much we can continue to showcase this piece and get people involved. So by reapproaching previous funders to say, you know, you can be a part of the continuation of the lifespan of the impact we are making, tends to give them sort of that idea of saying, okay, great, the piece is done, check. Now they need it to be going to all these different places, all these different exports. Let's do it. But that's because it has a social impact strategy behind it. That's how we're getting funding. I'm not trying to say like use that strategy for anything you're trying to get funding for. That's just how we tend to be able to bring more funds into the bank, because we're saying, hey, we need this amount of money to get to Brooklyn. We need this amount of money to make it accessible on a mobile device. Hey, we need this money to get it to universities. We need this type of money to get it into a museum. And a lot of our previous funders and / or previous grants are willing to be like, okay, great. That seems like a very viable thing you're asking for. And we're not asking for thousands and thousands of dollars at a time. It's usually just like a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there, so that maybe by the end of it, they've given us a very large chunk of money to support the social impact strategy. But as we're asking for it, it doesn't seem a lot as they're giving that back. And a lot of the platforms we talk with see a strategy and saying, oh yeah, let's prioritize a Black and brown sort of creator who's created a piece about surveillance technology, who has a Black and brown amazing cast behind them and crew behind them. And let's continue to support that endeavor to get that type of content onto our platform, like Quest, like Mozilla, etc. So like Typeform. So like even with Typeform, we got a free license for Typeform. And yes, that was a couple $100s that we saved, but a couple $100s can go a long way on a shoestring impact budget. So I hope that helps. It's just a lot of like nonstop asking. We're constantly asking for money. It's never like a stopping point and it's never easy. It's not like this all happens overnight.
Yeah. From the point of view of a company, how do you guys get your money? How do you what's the main kind of financial aid that you look out for?
So there's a few things. First of all, we sell a B2B animation tool. So what happens is that, you know, there's a license that we sell. But then usually if the customer is a larger customer, there's a whole project around it. So for example, when we did something with Caffeine as a streaming service, and they're kind of a Twitch competitor, and they wanted to create a 1 hour real-time talk show, animated talk show. Well, we were serviced to help them do production design, help them design that show, give them a license. So we do the kind of commercialization of our product and services. Another thing that we do too is that if you are, this usually happens in non-US locations, but I don't know if it's true or not all the way. But so where we're from, we have these things called sector councils. So sector councils are different groups that focus on like bringing sectors to market. So there's an interactive digital media sector council here that will support us bringing products to market. So we received $90,000 to help bring a product to market because these sector councils are giving government money to bring products to market, primarily because in Canada and other, you know, smaller markets, we're facing the competition of a large American market. And so how governments will support companies like ours is that they will provide those types of opportunities. And then finally, it's about creating the partnerships, like we were talking about earlier, how important partnerships are. So platforms, you know, the Oculuses and Facebooks, the HTCs, the Microsofts of the world, they have needs on their own platform. So if your product happens to fill a gap in their offering, then the opportunity to negotiate a potential development grant can come out of that as well. So there's lots of different avenues. Of course, as a company that's commercializing, we want to land on the private money the most in terms of like customer money and growing the company. But it's nice to see that there's other supports, because XR is an industry, as much as it's starting to take off and we're through the hype and through the winter and we're kind of growing, it's still at the bottom of that hockey stick curve. So there's still a lot of effort and work to bring enough revenue to keep teams going. So that's how we do it.
And just to add in my 2 cents. So, we have a number of different revenue streams. So for example, we've parlayed our expertise in getting games onto the PlayStation platform or the Oculus platform and other multi-platforms we're going to, as a service we provide to our clients. So we will get paid work for hire contracts to port other people's games to different platforms. That's kind of one income stream by parlaying our expertise in the area. And clients love that because it frees their team to work on the next project or create more content whilst we take care of this work for them. Another stream is obviously by launching your game and having it on lots of different platforms. You're making revenue and income there, which is another income stream. And we're also VC funded as well. So, I firmly believe in XR glasses going mainstream in the future. As being widely reported, there's a new tech center every 15 years. We went from mainframes to web to, mainframes to PC to web to smartphones. What's next? And all the big boys have got serious R&D initiatives, believing it'll be XR glasses. And for me, VR is a niche of the gaming industry, thinking about games per se. But when, we have AR glasses, especially Apple glasses, when it comes out, I think that'll be a major step forward in going mainstream. And, when Amazon and Google and Microsoft and Facebook come out with theirs, it's going to help push it to go mainstream faster, because AR glasses will provide a utility service and it keeps you in your environment. But it doesn't take too much of a stretch of imagination to see these glasses also have VR functionality as well, which would enable you to have fun, in the evenings. And I think that's when VR will truly go mainstream. And that's the future we're working towards. Is it 5 years, 6 years, 7 years? We'll see. But, very excited for that future. And it's my firm belief that the content creators honing their craft today on XR, will become the valuable studios in the future when it goes mainstream. And we've seen that happen numerous times, whether it's Facebook online games, whether it's mobile games. The larger studios don't typically put their best 100, 200, 300 people on the new medium because the ROI doesn't exist yet. What that means, it leaves ample room for startups to come in and come up with innovative ways of creating content, engaging content. And it's these startups that, as they begin to gain traction, start getting acquired by the large studios. And we've seen that, late last year, we had Vertigo Games get bought for 115 mil, CodeSync 85 million euros, Downpour Interactive got acquired by Facebook recently. And I think once the medium gains momentum, these valuations and exit prices are just going to increase if the history repeats itself like it did with Facebook online games and mobile games. But super excited. We're in it for the long term. I'm very excited to see where it goes. And it's definitely fun being part of the journey, that's for sure.
Yeah. So we had written, but there's one here for all the panelists as well. For creators, does it solve the platform limitations? Is it limited in its capabilities compared?
I can't give go ahead, or I'll go, Bobby. In our opinion, it's not something that we're pursuing at this moment because discoverability is difficult. But we are paying attention to what's happening in WebXR.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Say something.
Sorry, the audio cut out for me. Could you repeat the question, Susana?
Sorry. On if it solves the problem of platform limitations, or if it's still limited in its capabilities when compared with native apps.
I haven't used the web version of it, so wouldn't be able to comment on that. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So there's another one. Replayability from Prathan. Replayability in content is becoming more important than ever. Do you think about it when working on projects in XR?
I can speak to that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
For me, as just like an independent creator and as a project manager and as a producer, it really depends on the piece. So I could create a piece that has a lot of replayability, but I don't know if that's the intention of the social impact strategy or if that's the intention of the story. For example, there's an experience I'm working on when we're covering a large group of people, and our goal is to create a library of these people's stories with XR technology, and those people to be able to ask questions multiple times to those people using AI. So that has a lot of replayability, right? You could basically jump in, talk to someone, but then you have 30 other people you could go talk to about the same thing or the same event or the same historical moment, and get a different sort of point of view. That's very specific to that content. And that's very specific to that sort of strategy at the creative development level. The content that I'm currently working with doesn't have a ton of replayability content. You're assigned a case file, you watch the case file, you give your opinions about the case file, you're sort of left on a cliffhanger about where the shots came from, who fired the shots, and you tell us who you think fired the shots based on your own implicit biases. Then we give you a reveal of that case file. If I had wanted replayability with that experience, we would have made multiple case files for multiple reviews. But we only did one case file, A, because of budget, and B, because the point wasn't for replayability. The point was, once you're engaged with the content, how do you continue the discussion in your day-to-day life? So how do you start to get involved with surveillance technology in your own local community? That's our main KPI for this experience. So the replayability isn't as much important to us as much as it is to say, did the experience catch your eye? Did it make you think critically? Does it make you want to get involved? Here are all the ways you can get involved. And then seeing people start to get involved or seeing people start to have conversations about surveillance technology within their own circles. So it just depends for me on the project.
Of course. Lesley, you were going?
I was just going to say replayability for us is more like reusability. So because we make an app that's more B2B focused. But I think it's a similar problem, but just are you making a vitamin, or are you like curing a headache? And so we're curing a headache. So we want to make sure that people can continually use the app over and over and over and over again to solve their problems. And if we're not solving their problems, then we're not creating reusability. And I'd argue if you're not making it fun, and there's probably a similar parallel on the game side, but I won't speak to that. But for us, it's reusability.
It really depends on the experience you're trying to create. So for us, with Neverboard, it is free-to-play experience is a lot game as a service, and so replayability is important for the specific goals that we're making for that game. But a paid game where you pay up front, whatever it is, may not have that same goal because they're doing a narrative-driven experience that, sure, you could replay it, but that isn't the goal of what they're trying to create. They're trying to develop a really immersive narrative experience, and therefore that's not going to be something that they're going to think as they're making design decisions. Well, is this replayable? That's not a question they're going to ask. They're going to ask the other goals that they're making. And Bobby, you've made a lot of games. You may have some insights on this as well.
Thank you. Yes, replayability for when we were designing Zombieland was very high on the list. The type of game it is, it's an arcade experience, easily accessible, and to the first level, Gas and Gulp, it may take you 5, 6, 7, 8 goes to get to the end of the level before without dying, and then once you've completed the level, you may do it in 1 minute 20 seconds, and by replaying it, you will get faster and faster time, and you'll start climbing the leaderboard because your skill level, your mastery is improving, and then it's like Trackmania, where the levels, some people in the leaderboards are getting it done within like sub 15 seconds, which is insane. But to get to that level of mastery, you need to be playing for hours and hours and hours, trying to shave off a millisecond off your time. But we've as per the ratings and the reviews we're seeing on the Oculus Store, people are getting addictive. They love the slow-mo mechanic we've introduced, and it's our take on bullet time, which people see as an innovation. And we've partnered up with the VR Master League, and it's been turned into an esports tournament, and very excited for that to come out. And people who are great at the game will get to show off how good they actually are. But yeah, replayability is super high on our list because you want people who buy your content to get hours and hours of fun out of the game. And so for us designing this game, yes, replayability is super high on the list.
I just want to squeeze one more question, just yes, no, maybe from all of you. For other creative industries, there's already an established protocol when it comes to business models. Do you think we are getting close to having a template for XR distributions?
And I don't know that there should be one.
Yeah. So.
And there's a lot there that they can get: tickets, tips, SaaS, one-off purchases, in-app purchases. They're all there. You just got to figure out what works.
Mm-hmm. So there's still a long road ahead of us, but it's still exciting to have a lot to discover and a lot of paths to go forward. So our time has finished. Thank everyone for joining us. A special thanks to our panelists. There will be a series of articles on XR distribution coming out soon at the AXR Insights page, and I hope that this talk and these experiences will help you take that extra step on XR distribution. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, y'all.